Just fix it in post.
Oh yeah, that's great, but we'll never use it.
There's no budget, and it was due like yesterday.
There's been a slight change in direction.
I promise, it's just one last revision.
Welcome to Just Fix It in Post, industry insights straight from the source. I'm your host, Sean Rice, and welcome. A jack of all trades and a master of, well, pretty much everything. Whether it's CGI animation, sales, or creative direction, this guy can wear more hats than an overpacked suitcase on vacation. Partner at Tiki Studios, he's all about speed, efficiency, and delivering jaw-dropping results without ever sacrificing quality. From creating killer 3D models to tricks on motorcycles that would make your head spin, he does it all. Buckle up, because we're about to dive into the fast-paced world of Sergey Poltavskiy. Yo.
Hello. I was like, are you going to go for that last name? That's a long one. Even I can't really sound it out properly.
Could never get it right with the broadcast voice and the, anyways, I don't want to get hung up on that. But I had to stick the motorcycle part in there because it's something that I have never seen anybody else do. How did you even get into that, by the way?
You got the nerd side and you got to have the cool side. And that was like the balance of, all right, we're going to dedicate our whole life to sitting behind a computer, but we'll just run from the cops doing wheelies over here. And we'll balance out into like a neutral, like you're an okay kind of guy.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's pretty amazing. So I got to hand it to you. When I got into CGI, which is because of you, you made it seem so easy and available and interesting, and your videos really kind of broke down really to a T the basics of how to get into this, and then it was kind of just got me to go on my own and running off and be able to do my own thing. And there's not a lot of information out there on YouTube, 3ds Max, especially with like car models and importing and textures and all this other stuff. I mean, there's certain specific things and then some stuff that's very generic, but nothing that really covers the entire process the way you do. So how'd you get into this? Where'd you start? What's kind of your story?
And I think for me, Sean, is I'm not good. Like, there's some people that are just natural the talents. Like, whatever it is, like, I used to do a lot of skateboarding as a kid, and one of the guys that I really like is Rodney Mullen. So I watch a lot of his interviews, and even now, he's like, okay, so I did an ollie, and then I just accidentally hit the foot and the board flipped, and within an hour, I was landing a kickflip. I wouldn't, in my life, I could still barely land a kickflip, and I've spent years trying to learn how to do it. So natural talent is not for me. So for me, it was just, unfortunately, hard work. And when I got into it, so I got into CGI about 2001, so early 2000. This is before YouTube, before really internet. It was 56K with a dial-up modem that makes all those stupid sounds before you connect to the internet. But I picked up a copy of 3D Max. It was the first program I've ever used, but back when I got into it, Autodesk didn't own it. It was a company called Discrete, and it was 3D Max R3 or 3D Max 3. So that kind of goes to show my age. I've been really like on the front lines of the whole software and its development. But when I got into CG, it was not rendering. I didn't have any desire for making pretty pictures, nothing like that. All I wanted to do was make car models. So this was around early 2000s, so Fast and Furious came out, and I've always loved cars. I've tried drawing them. I'm not a talent, so I always sucked with just drawing. So when I discovered CG, I'm like, okay, this is fantastic because I'm good at tracing. So I like loopholes in life. And with modeling cars, you lay out a blueprint, and then you trace it, but in 3D form. So that was my just real passion, is creating 3D models, and it was a hobby. I had no thought of it ever being a career. It was just like, I like this. It's fun. It's a fun hobby. Because I started, I think at 12 or 11, something like that. So at 14, I had an agency from Canada reach out to me, and they had a job for Honda. It was like a Flash game when Flash was still...
At 14?
Yeah.
Dude, you're a legend. Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Me making all those body kits is actually what got me on the radar, because I would make these Civics, these Supras, all these cars with body kits and just post pictures online. And back then it was SM Cars, there was cgkingdom.org. There were a few of these websites that were like the top websites. Like today, it's Facebook, whatever it is. Back in the day, there were some of these 3D like key sites. And so the creative agent guy found me, and his name is Carl, if I remember correctly. And he was the guy that kind of gave me the opportunity to like my first actual job. So 14 years old, I had one little job for advertising called Sonic Boom Creative Media. I think they're still in business. And I modeled a few body kits and made $1,000 in a couple weeks. And even now, it's a lot of money. But for a 14-year-old in the early 2000s, that was a ton of money.
Yeah, dude, you're rich at that point. Like, you made it.
Rolling high, yeah. And so
wait, where are you at this time?
So I was born in Russia and then moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania when I was 4, and then lived there for a year. Then I moved to Sacramento, California. And in Sacramento, this is where I got into CGI. Around middle school, that's when I got into CG. So did that project, and I've already bought me a graphics card. That seemed like the logical thing to do. This is where the nerd side comes in.
Reinvest,
Instead of buying, a watch, whatever 14-year-olds in high school or middle school will do to show off, I bought a graphics card. That was like the thing that I was like, all right, this could work out. And it wasn't invest. It was so I could play GTA. This is when GTA 3 came out, when they first went from like the 2D to the 3D. Then fast forward, 2005, my family and I, we moved to Idaho because I grew up very poor. So Section 8 and welfare, and California's got great benefits for poor people. This is the way the state is. It's a very good place to be if you don't have a good income. And so my dad, he's a truck driver. So he started his own business, and we were able to finally afford to buy a house. And in California, it was just the prices were so overpriced.
Right.
In Idaho, at the moment, it was a desert with just barely on the come up. So it was very affordable housing. 2005, we moved here. I just kept doing what I do for fun. And then Sonic Boom Creative Media, the same agency, reached out. They had a job with Dodge this time, like a pick my ride kind of video game. It was actually with Dodge and Gillette Fusion. Gillette Fusion was doing a tournament where you go to their website, you configure a Dodge Charger. This is when the Dodge Charger first came out, and the Dodge Caliber. And so my task was to like model like air ride suspension, different rims, little body kits. So just a pick my ride kind of thing and render the assets. So they sent me CAD data of those two cars. This is the first time I've ever experienced what CAD data is. And I had no idea what it was. I didn't know how to work with it. I knew nothing. So I opened it up and I was like, hey, Carl, I don't know what to do with this. This is absolutely useless. This is trash. It's like super dense, bogging my machine down. I can't do anything. So he's like, okay, well, can you remodel it? And that's where I knew how to model. So I got the job done within a month. This time I made $9,000.
Damn.
It was way more. So I was skipping school. My mom was writing me all kinds of letters supportive
That's
of my...
awesome.
Because it was like, I could go to school, which I was already getting D's and F's in, or I could make $9,000. So statistically speaking, I was going to fail regardless. So I might as well fail with money versus just failing trying. So I helped my parents out. They had some financial things that they needed help with. So I gave them a lot of money. That built me a computer. And then I had, I think, like $900 left. I didn't know what to do with it. And when you're young and immature, you just want to spend it. It's just burning a hole in your pocket.
Oh, yeah.
So I went to Best Buy, and I had a Mitsubishi Lancer. That was my first car. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get a sweet sound system. It's going to be amazing. So, and it was a total douchebag thing to do. So I go in, and the guy's like, all right. I was like, I want a sound system. He's like, well, what's your budget? And I was like, money's not a problem. Money's not an object.
You're rolling, dude.
Well, dude, $900. Well, turns out sound systems could get very, very expensive, way above that $900 budget. Then I just went to Verizon Wireless and bought me a cell phone. And this was when remember back in the day, before iPhones or whatever, they had the phones that had the whole keyboard and like the square. It was like a Windows operating system.
Yeah.
Graduated high school barely. And my dad's like, all right, you got to go to school. I was like, okay, well, I want to do what the Americans do. They take a year off. I was like, this is the American way. You don't go to school right away. You hang out for a year, you regroup, and then you go hit it hard. So I took a year off. We lived in Idaho to BSU, Boise State University. Apparently when you are dumb and you have bad grades, they don't like you. So they rejected me immediately. They're like, yeah, you can't attend our school. So then I just kept doing CGI for fun. And I was like, okay, I got to make some money. So I started making video tutorials of how to model a Dodge Charger. And I don't know if you've seen them. I put them on the automotive.
Oh, I've seen them. There's like my library that I go to on like how to like, if I need to go back to basics, I was out there.
It's super old, but it was a full guide of how to model the full car. And I would burn it. This is when, back in the day, before like cloud and everything. So I would burn it on CDRs It would take 4 of those discs to put the whole like tutorial on it, because there was no YouTube, and I wanted to sell it, and I was selling them. So I was selling these tutorials to just people everywhere. And I think I was charging them like $150, $90, something like that. But I was selling a bunch of copies all over US, and then overseas. I would add a note like, hey, if you have any questions, here's my email. Here, and remember back in the MSN Messenger?
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, here's my MSN Messenger, add me. I'd love to like help you like one-on-one. So it wasn't like a pay me for my services. It was like, I appreciate you buying my tutorial. If you have anything that I can help you with, just reach out. I'm here to help. So it was no mentorship subscriptions, none of that. It was just generally an artist helping other artists. And so I sold a bunch of those. I sold one to this guy named Brandon, and he worked in a studio in Atlanta. And you'll see some of those pictures. I say they're Transformers.
Yeah.
So Brandon was working in a studio in Atlanta. Indigo Studios was the name, and they were just slammed with Hasbro work making Transformers. And he's like, "Hey, are you interested in helping us out as a freelance work?" I was like, "Absolutely." So picked up some freelance work and started knocking those out. And right at the time as I started doing that project, a bunch of those, this was already years later. So again, I just spent years just fooling around, playing Counter-Strike and doing CGI. That was my life. No college, no progress, nothing, just Counter-Strike and CGI. So then there's a local community college that opened up here. It's called College of Western Idaho. And they had a course for like drafting/engineering. So I was like, I know how to model engineering, kind of 3D space. I could do like algebra pretty good. So I signed up. And the first semester I had a class, it was like science, the basics of like metals and atoms and neutrons. And that is the stuff I fail at. I just don't do science. Well, I'm going to fail this class, so might as well make some money doing it. So I went and bought me a laptop at Best Buy. They had like 12 months, no interest. So I was like, I'm going to buy me a laptop, build my credit score, and at the same time, I'll just knock out a few of these Transformers, make some money. I just sat in class, just modeling away. I was like, I really don't care. Like, I'm paying to be here. And there was a guy sitting next to me who glanced over. He's like, that is so cool. Can you teach me? And I was like, well, how good are you at this science stuff? He's like, oh, this is easy. I totally get it. And so I aced that class. I copied him on everything. And at the end of the semester, I think there was like a couple of weeks off before you start the second semester. And I reached out to Mark. He was the owner of Indigo. He's the founder of Indigo. And I was like, Mark, I'm doing a lot of work with you. Is there by any chance a job offer you could give me? Because I would love to work full time in the studio. And Mark was just kind of like, look, I would love to give you a job, but there's not enough work for me to be comfortable to have you move across the United States for a job that just might dry up. I was like, no problem. So sign up for second semester. And this time they throw physics at me. If I was bad at science, physics is way over my head. Like, I was like, oh boy. So first week, I already was getting Fs on every homework assignment. It just nothing clicked. Luckily, second week into that second semester, Mark emails me. He's like, hey, do you want a job? And I was like, absolutely, I want a job. I absolutely hate college. I don't want to be in college. I was like, this is the best thing ever. And I was like, I kind of wish he gave me this offer before I just paid my second semester fees and books and all that. I was like, however, I don't want to be here. So absolutely, I want a job offer. So he's like, can you get here within a week? Which, moving across the United States, that's a big task for a lot of people. I was 21 and I was living with my parents. And my dad's a truck driver. He was in town. He's got his own truck, his own 53-foot trailer. And so I was like, I could make it happen. And so I went in the next day, dropped out of college, quickly found a house for rent that's kind of affordable within my budget because I didn't know the cost of living. This is the first time I was going to be independent, if you will. I had a few motorcycles, sold one just so I have more funds for, first time being on your own. And loaded up all my assets into my dad's semi-truck. And I was out there in Atlanta by February 14th of 2011. So then started working at Indigo full-time. I was quickly like, okay, I'm alone in Atlanta, like other side of the state or country of where my parents are. I got to make sure I am valuable to the company because at the end of the day, when layoffs start coming, it's what do you bring to the table that essentially, like, that's what people stick around for. And so I was like, okay, modeling is not that important, because this was an advertising agency, and Indigo had a lot of different accounts. They had Caterpillar, Hasbro, TTI Floor Care. Then they worked with different advertising agencies where they would just give them a concept of like, hey, we want a warehouse with people walking and sharks in the concrete. Can you make it happen? So it was very, very exciting and diverse work. Always random stuff. Sometimes I'd have to model like a Coke machine type of deal. So it was a very cool place to be, because you learn everything. You learn the CAD data prep, and not just like taking OEM CAD data, but working with native raw CAD files where it's a huge mess and you gotta, as the vendor, figure it out for the client of how to make it happen.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yep. And so what happened was I was like, okay, I gotta kind of sponge off of everyone. So I was like, I gotta learn what he does, what he does, what he does. So that way when layoffs start coming, I could be like, well, I know what he does and he does, so let them go, keep me. That was my logic. And I will say this, Mark has never laid anyone off. Even when business slowed down, he was always smart with his business. And this is why I really respect him as an owner, and he was my mentor. He kind of guided me on everything about CGI. Yeah, and eventually I told him, like, I really, really want to own my own studio at some point in life. And he didn't see that as a threat. He just saw that as someone motivated enough to work hard. That was kind of like what got me started is, okay, I got to start learning things. So I started off with CAD data prep. And that was with a Caterpillar. They had a Caterpillar account. And my process was get CAD data and start organizing things. What's yellow paint, what's hardware, things like that. Then adding UV maps for like the decals. So that's where I really started working on creating the knowledge of how to make a pipeline for data prep. And this is where like the whole like skill tree starts developing of what helped me be a generalist is I spent about 6 months to a year on nothing but CAD data prep and really try to find the perfect workflow, how to make it fast, consistent, and effective, where it's like, this is the stuff you're never going to see, just delete it. Like, yeah, it's great to have all this detail, but for what we're doing, it's unnecessary, so why keep it? And then I started learning how to rig, because then it was, okay, we have this Caterpillar thing and we need the front bucket to lift up. And unlike just some pivot point that goes up and down, you have all the hydraulics, the bucket has like 3 or 4 hinges, so there's a lot of cause and effect. And that's where I just started learning how to rig. And again, 2011, 2012, it's not like there's YouTube videos on all these things, especially with the Caterpillar tractor. So it was just kind of like just testing things, trial, error, or like links, constraints, all kinds of weird stuff. But eventually like things started happening. So then had another project, had to learn how to rig a whole engine. So that was pistons, valves, crankshafts, springs, everything. And that was a blast. And then we had a Caterpillar transmission animation. I had to learn how to rig an actual transverse transmission. So it was all the little gear sets and everything kind of shifting and moving, one slowing down, one accelerating. And that was me being on the phone with the clients in Germany, talking with the engineers, how does this work? And that's where I started kind of developing the skill set of talking to people. To me, it's important not that you just know how to do the work, but you could actually socialize with the clients, with the engineers, and just have a good conversation where it doesn't feel like you're nervous. Because I see everything as a skill. I'm not naturally good with like social skills. So that was like, okay, I got to really work on this. Like I really suck at being able to talk to people with a kind of just a smooth flow. And that's where it was fantastic, because I'd hop on these phone calls, have to talk with them, all that good stuff. So then I was like, okay, I kind of want to start learning how to render now. And it would be like a little project here, a little project there. I'd do something like, hey, Mark, this is all prepped. Here's a little test render of how it looks. And eventually me sending him those like test renders, he's like, hey, Sergey, try to do this job on your own. Like this test render looks good. Try to take it to final. And it was those opportunities that Mark presented me with where I was like, okay, I could try this. And then it was like, do this, do this. And then we had one job where it was over Christmas break. It was a rush deadline. And pretty much naturally, everyone just wanted to be at home with their families. And I understood, like, you gotta pay your dues. Like, this is where you grind away and eventually it's going to reward you. So it was me and Mark, because Mark was the kind of owner that if he's an artist that just eventually opened his own company, but he was there always working and he would outperform the people that work for him. And unlike a lot of owners that just know the industry but don't put in work, Mark was always working overtime, spending nights at the studio. He worked. He was a CGI guy, a photographer, a retoucher. But what he taught me is instead of having that whole ego, because whenever I would watch tutorials on retouching and everyone has all the like curves, white balance, selective color adjustments, he's like, you could do that, or you could just run this filter and it looks cool. He's like, I don't care. He's like, I don't care about doing everything manually Photoshop. If I could throw a filter, contrast, saturation, white balance, he's like, I'll do it. And so that's where I started learning from him, is all that pride in like, oh, I'm so technical and really breaking it down. That's great. Or if you could do this and your client's happy, you just spend a lot less time and you build it. The job's done. So that's where I was learning that shortcuts are okay as long as the end product looks good. Like nothing has to be by the book of what is a respectable method of doing it by the industry, if you will. And Mark along the way kept always mentoring me, telling me like, look up good work and try to recreate it. You need to build a recipe for how to do good work. And if you show me something that looks like crap and you think it's good, I'm going to really question your judgment skills. And so he was helpful, awesome, but also very direct. So if I did something bad, he'd come up and he's like, are you sure you're happy with that? Because it kind of looks bad. Advertising, at least in the CGI studio side, you have to have thick skin. So if people get offended over someone just being harsh with criticism, it's going to be tough to be in this industry, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. Some people are nicer about how they present you with feedback. Some people are more direct. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're trying to offend you. They just want to get to the final product faster. In 2019, Mark sold the company. Tom had no idea what advertising is. Tom had nothing in his background with creativity or anything that resembles a person buying a company that's a CGI studio. And then after that, Tom wanted to start doing shady things where he told clients that he's an investor and Mark is still the owner. So he started lying to clients so that they're not panicking. Well, Mark only stuck around for a year and then Mark retired. He was gone. So then after that, they promoted me to Mark's position. And that's where I had to actually start flying out, going to lunches with clients, things like that, and actually like mingling with them, because we did a lot of stuff with GTB Ford. And Tom knows nothing about it. Tom's kind of like a business guy, because his logic was, with my college background with business and everything, I could buy this creative studio that has these numbers and make it double, triple. And unfortunately, that's not how the creative industry works. Sometimes you have great years. Sometimes you have absolute awful years. And it's not because you did good or bad. It's just if the agencies don't have work to give out, they don't have work to give out. Or if they find another vendor they want to work with, it has nothing. It's like a lot of factors are out of our control. When I got promoted in Mark's job, I had a great salary bump, everything. But let me be clear, I didn't respect the owners, because Mark was the owner who put in work, who did the work, understood the work. These new guys knew nothing about the industry. They just wanted the staff to work for them and make them wealthy and successful, which to me is not how you run a creative shop. So at that point, I was like, okay, I got to get out of here. So I knew a guy, Joe. He used to be the sales rep at Indigo, and then he left to a studio called Indigo Studios in Michigan. And they did a lot of FCA work. So Joe and I got to talking. He introduced me to the owners. I had an interview and I got a job offer. I moved to Michigan and I worked at that studio for a year and a half. And then I got a message from Joe. He was like, hey, I got two guys that they've been seeing your work, because I was posting on social media every day, just rendering. So this is when the Corvette C8 first came out. I found a 3D model of it, and I designed a wide body kit just for fun, and I was just doing render after render, and those things went viral. Like, there were YouTube videos with my render saying this is how the ZR1's gonna look, just BS like that, for clickbait.
Right.
But my images were all over the place, and so the Chuck and Dean are two guys. They're my business partners right now with Tiki, but Dean was following me on Instagram, and he told Chuck, like, there's this Russian guy who's like posting daily, and it's always new stuff, because someone would be like, hey, can you do this? And then I would post it.
Right.
And Joe's like, I got two guys that want to get lunch with you. I was like, well, who are they, Joe? Because I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste their time. It's kind of like a free lunch is great and all, but I do respect people's time and such. He's like, Chuck and Dean. And the reason why the name Chuck and Dean is important, Chuck and Dean owned a studio called Armstrong White. It was a huge, they sold it, so they're not owners, but Armstrong White is still around. But they had Nissan, Infiniti, Hyundai, they did a lot of automotive work, and that was their like focus, was automotive work. And back in Atlanta, when I was working for Mark, he told me, if you ever want to own your own company, you have to find a business partner who's a sales rep like Chuck. So we got lunch, and I told Chuck, I was like, look, Chuck, the next step for me is just try to work for myself to become wealthy. And so that evening, Chuck texted me. He's like, how about a partnership, a third? We're all equal. We just team up and just start killing it. And I was so blown. I was like, why the hell would he want to team up with me? I'm just an artist. Chuck is an OG in the industry, very successful, very established. Like, he's a somebody, I'm a nobody. But he generally he's just a fair guy. So, and this is why our partnership is so good. Chuck doesn't have an ego. He doesn't look at what he's accomplished. He respects artists as artists and just wants to collaborate and do a great business for the clients. And so we start Tiki Studios right before COVID. We go to the lawyer's office, sign all the LLC papers, everything, and then I go in that same day for lunch or after lunch, and the guy's like, oh, where were you? Are you like quitting? I was like, yeah, I just want to start a new business. Because, when you say things like that, no one really believes you.
That's the best response from coming back from lunch. Where'd you go? Oh, just want to go leave you.
Me, Chuck, and Dean, we're like, all right, what is our focus for Tiki Studios? And Chuck had a few connections at Leo Burnett, and he said, this is the only agency I want to focus on. He's like, I'm not trying to go after Nissan, Infiniti, Honda, none of that. He's like, I want to focus on staying in Michigan and servicing Leo Burnett and GM. And that's what we did. So we started off slow, little job here, just to kind of get the opportunity to kind of work with them. And eventually that snowball, it grew. And they are an amazing agency to work with. The people are really friendly, very easy to work. Like there's no like struggle in seniority. Everyone's respectful. And as long as, I understand that they are the clients and I do whatever they want, it's amazing. And for the last 4.5 years, it's been a blast. So we've done everything from catalogs to brand new vehicle launches to just a bunch of animations. And with me owning Tiki Studios with Chuck and Dean being the only CGI guy, it forced me to learn how to do full CGI environments, get really more involved on animations, because I never really did animations. I hated it because every time there's a revision, it's like a whole timeline adjustment. It's not just, adjusting an animation 10 seconds into it when you have a 2-minute animation is going to be easy. There's a cause and effect. And that's why I absolutely hated animations. But if that's what clients want, that's what clients want. I started learning how to do that. And that's where kind of the whole generalist thing works. And so the way, the way I would phrase it is, there's so many artists out there that are amazing and way better than me at CGI and all this stuff. Like me, I see myself like, I'm okay. I get around, getting things done, but there's an amazing talent out there that's way better than me. So for me, it's kind of like, all right, what can I do that's going to be a little different? So speed. I am very fast at what I do. And the habit that I've developed is I can just fly through projects. It just comes naturally to me to just get it done. And then it's just have a good time with clients. So that's what I've learned from Mark is you got to have a good rapport with clients and just have a great conversation where it's not like, dude, this is the job. What do I do this? Just have miscellaneous conversations with them, their interests, their hobbies, things like that, where you're a person. You're not just a vendor, if that makes sense. And so working with Leo Burnett, it's been amazing. Built some wonderful relationships with these people, and it's been great. And like the jobs we do, they're solid, but then we'll have miscellaneous conversations that have nothing to do with the jobs. Like we'll hop on a Teams call. 15, 20 minutes of the Teams call is just chat. That just chit chat with nothing to do about the job. Then we're like, oh yeah, let's just knock out this topic real quick and then we'll just go on our way. Like one client, I was talking with her always about AMC and GameStop stocks. Like when are we selling? When are we going to the moon? And it's stuff like that just makes it a little more interesting. So for me, and like what we do at Tiki, what makes us a little different than a lot of studios is since Chuck, Dean, and myself are all owners, we're all equals. So when clients get on a call with us, we don't have a producer that kind of takes down notes and then sends that message to the artist interpreting what she thought the client asked. So for us, Dean does all the retouching. Dean is really, really amazing at retouching. Chuck is the sales guy. He brings in the jobs, does all the client relations, and I'm the CGI guy. But when we hop on the call, all three people that are involved in the business on the job are all present. So whenever the client wants to see something, we're there to understand what they want, and we could deliver without miscommunication. And that's kind of like the niche of Tiki is the owners are always on the calls, are always available, and we're responsible for everything the clients want, and there's no like staff that could like quality control. We're not going to try to do a bad job and go home early because we are responsible for the brand name, if you will. And that's what I think has been really good for us in our success so far, is just the fact that we three are always present and are always involved. And then like when we do jobs, we'll internally be like, what do you guys think? And then Chuck and Dee, because even though Chuck is sales, he has college background, everything in art. So he actually graduated from art and everything.
Right.
So he knows what looks good and what doesn't. Like right now, we're finishing up a project and it's a logo, but it was looking bland. And Chuck texted me at night. He's like, dude, he's like, is there anything you could do? He's like, I get it. Like they're okay with this so far, but if we just try to do this, and he was sending reference images. I hopped on at midnight because I'm always working, just rendered out 17 different examples, sent them to the client. And he's like, these are so amazing. I love this one and this one. If you could combine those two, this will be good. So that helped take the quality from okay to making the client go, I love this. And that's what makes it great, where Chuck shares his opinion and I'm not a person that's like, well, you're sales, stick to sales. I would absolutely never say that. If I value any criticism, whether good or not, is good to explore and then see if it makes sense or not. And so that's what makes it great for us in Tiki. And we just collaborate together and do what we can do to make great work for our clients.
What would you say are like the top three things that you can attribute Tiki's success towards in terms of the relationship you have with a client and being able to continue?
One thing is speed. So our clients know how small or how tight or long the deadline is, we'll get it done, because the people working on the project are people who own the business. So for us, if you need us to work through a holiday, we'll work through a holiday. If you need us to, like we've done projects with China, and it would be, I work the full day with the clients in US, and it was a GM, but just the China team. Right. And then around 9 p.m., I'd be hopping on a phone call to start up a brand new project with the China team. And it was just being able to service them fully. They knew like anytime they like have a meeting, they could send me a Teams invite and I'm there. I'm not going to say, hey, today is a bad day. Let me know tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'm available. We don't do that. For us, we are here to service you and you only. You need to throw a Teams 10 minutes from now, throw it. We'll be there. So that's the first thing I would say is that. Chuck is good with people, and it's just the way he bonds with the people in his like social skills. It has nothing to do with him trying to like, okay, do you have work? We do CGI. He's just like, hey, let's go out and have some wine, or let's go grab a steak. Let's go to dinner. And he doesn't care whether you're a high-end executive or like a producer or like an entry-level creative. If you work with us, he'll take you out one-on-one just to have a good time. And then Dean's like, hey, have you noticed like how nice Chuck is? I was like, yeah, dude, I had. He's like, genuinely just that nice. And there's no scam attached to it. The third thing I would say is understanding the brand. So like me, for example, I'm a car guy. So I really understand all the specs of Cadillac. So like the Blackwings, the V series, the sports. So when we do these projects, I know the questions to ask because I really dig into the cars. So like when we have a project for the Blackwing, I know to ask, do you want it automatic or manual? Because I know manual is the best like sales pitch for the vehicle. And then these are the questions that are good because it helps the team that maybe not as interested in the vehicle or not as educated look good in front of their clients, because we're asking them the right questions to ask their clients, if you will. Because, again, Sean, you know how it is. It's, you have the vendor, the agency, and then the client. So eventually the information gets asked to the client, and then it's wonderful. And then like product reviews, like for example, if I get a brand new vehicle for a project today, by end of day today, I'll have product renders ready for review. So that way tomorrow I can start going to like scene setups and start going to like semi-final on the images. So it's the whole speed and understanding the product and doing like research. So my thought is just, I want to get to the finish line. So having to go to the client and ask them to provide something and then having to do research and figure out if it's out there or not, that's going to delay the job by, days, if not weeks. So for me, it's like, if I could just figure something out real quick, whether it's modeling a little product, or flip-flopping something just to get it to the finish line, I'll do it. Like we did a project with Cadillac and we needed like a charging station. So they gave me access to this like a little private showroom that Cadillac has. And they had one of those charging stations. It's all like prototypes. So I took a bunch of photos, went home, modeled it. We knocked the job out. Just get it done. That's my logic, is just get it done. Like, don't try to make excuses. Just figure out a solution.
I see that, oftentimes one of the biggest failures a company can make is being their own speed bump. Can you kind of walk me through, so when you guys get a project, what's kind of the process that you guys go through when you get the project?
So there's two styles of projects we've been doing. One is your typical like one-off project. And by that I mean, it's like, okay, they'll come to us and like, hey, we need the Sierra AT4 short bed rendered in this backplate. So not a big deal. I take the CAD data, and it's called UDM. That's just the name for what the CAD data is called from GM. It's called a UDM file, but it's essentially it's an FBX. So I get that, I pop it in, and typically that file has everything, every bumper, every grille, every headlight option, everything there. So then what I do is I just go to like gmc.com and I spec out the vehicle that they're telling me to render. And I'll set it up to the best of my ability to match, because obviously, it has to be product accurate.
Right.
So I'll set up all the chrome grill, because they'll have like grill with like little divots, grill with little lines. So I just spec out exactly what looks like apples to their build-in price online. And then if it's like the job is just rendering like a front 3/4 view, I'll just render a front 3/4 view, like a quick little sloppy studio setup, and present it to them that, okay, here's the truck set up. Let me know what's right and wrong. And typically there's always issues. It's just, that's the nature of it. There's no way you can
product and legal have to do their job.
So anyhow, I always do that. That's my first workflow, is create a quick studio output and then, okay, here's the setup. What is right? What is wrong? And then they'll be like, oh, the lug nuts on the rims need to be black instead of chrome. Like, the seat headrest, we need it to say AT4. And then that's when I have to start opening the interior. Because the way the CAD data comes is they have two files. One's an exterior file, one an interior. The exterior has a dummy interior that's super low res. I don't touch the interior file unless I have to. And so when they tell me like the headrest and like the side A-pillar speakers have to have the details, then I'll just snag those elements just to kind of throw in like the big brand difference, if you will. But I don't want to prep a full interior, because that's like a whole different path to go down. So we do that, and then we'll spend about 3 to 4 rounds of back and forth with product revisions. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, we need the amber lights on, the DRLs, oh, they're a little too foggy, miscellaneous things like that. And then once we feel like we're in a good place, then I'll create the next still in an actual backplate with the lighting, whatever they needed to do to look there. And I'll be like, okay, here's the start. Let's run it through product. Because sometimes product will make creative, like they'll say this chrome is too dark. Even though I know when we put it in an environment, the HDRI is going to light the chrome differently. So it's kind of like, why would I worry about dialing in a chrome material in a studio that's made for huge product issues? So like what I'm always looking for is the grill right? Are the headlights right? Did we get the right rims and tires on it? Things like that. So sometimes, and I understand why they're doing it, because that's their job, is to say this red is too dull or not bright enough. But me knowing the fact that we're not living in this environment, I kind of like, with respect, ignore those comments. I put them in the back of my mind that when we do the real render, we're going to have to make sure this does look good. But for the moment, it's not something I'm going to address because it's irrelevant. So then we render it, and I'll do one more route through product, and then they'll be like, okay, we're good. And they sign off on it. And it's beautiful because there's Proof HQ. So there's like a roadmap of who signed off on it. So we could always be like, well, product said it was good. So that way it's not like we're going to final with misinformation, if you will. So then we'll do a setup where if it's, for example, like a very unique backplate where they like want to explore perspective, we'll have a working session. So we'll have the creatives, everyone that wants to be involved in the job, hop on a Teams call. I share my monitor, and then we just work with lenses. So, and that's where my background with photography comes in. So I'll be like, all right, are we focused on medium format or just full frame? So I'm like, okay, we'll talk full frame lenses. And so then I was like, all right, this is a 32, this is a 24. We're really starting to distort product here. Here's a 55. And we'll work with giving them options, how the vehicle sits in place. Because the one thing I've learned with advertising, you can have a backplate that's shot on a 35, let's say, millimeter lens. Doesn't mean that's how they're going to want their car rendered into it. So
interesting.
that's where I've learned apples to apples. While I love being literal, it doesn't work. Like sometimes I've rendered cars at 70 as the lens of the vehicle on a 35 millimeter backplate. Sometimes there's a 24 millimeter backplate and we render like a 55 millimeter. So it really is just a matter of, does this car look the best it could to sell the shape and design lines? And that's where, yeah, it sucks because I love making the perspectives and everything match. But at the end of the day, you know, if this is what the client asks for, this is what the client gets. So we'll do a working session. And then let's say they settle on like 3 options. So I'll render out 3 low-res renders for them. And then they will either internally discuss which one they like the most, or they present those 3 to their clients. And then they do like, okay, we like option 2. And then after that, I'll do a full render with all the alpha passes, everything. And I hand it off to Dean. And Dean is the guy who makes it really amazing. So Dean's a madman when it comes to this shot. Like
it's an entire, let me tell you, like as somebody who's a composite artist, working with CGI files, there's a whole other level of information that you need to be able to it's like speaking another language in terms of being able to translate it and then being able to bring out the best of every aspect of what you've rendered, because it's not just a single image that you're coming out with. You know, you've got to think about all the single parts, the lighting, the way it affects everything. And then it's, like you said, it's got to be product correct. It's got to be true. And then it's got to look like it actually exists in the background that it's in. So it's like, it is next level.
Yeah. And so Dean gets it and then he'll do all his stuff. And of course, I might give him a little note like, hey, the clients wanted the chrome to be bright, the little things to make sure that once he's going to final, he just makes sure that it gets addressed properly. And then he'll send them a first look and then they'll make markups on that. And sometimes they'll make markups and sometimes product will come in with a brand new comment that comes out of nowhere. You're like, I thought this was product approved, but I guess it's not. And so Dean is also very interesting. Like I've worked with a lot of retouchers that would say, hey, can you fix it? Like re-render it for me. Where Dean's like, don't even worry about it. I'll take care of it. And some of the things I'm like, Dean, I could render it. It's going to be a lot easier for me to render it. Like, let me help you. He's like, no, don't even worry about it. Like, I'm going to render it for you because that's a lot. Like, I've done, like, I do retouching from time to time, but not like an expert at it at all. And so it blows my mind where Dean's comfortable enough to really do stuff in post that I know is a lot easier to just re-render and throw it in there. And it makes it a great partnership where he doesn't have to like get me to keep re-rendering over and over and over, where he has the skills to just get it done real quick and send it off to the client instead of waiting on me to give him like a patch fix, if you will. And then, then after that, they'll go through a few rounds with Dean and we're done. And that wraps up the project of like a one-off. Now, there's the other side. So we've been doing a lot of things called digital brochures for Cadillac. And what these are is kind of like a full experience of the vehicle. So it's showing every spec exterior with every spec interior. And this is a lot more intense, a lot more hands-on because, like, for example, we just wrapped up like 2 months ago. It was the brand new Escalade. That thing has like 9 or 13 interiors. And because it's the brand new vehicle, there's not a lot of information out there. And so I'm going like, hey, how do I configure this interior? Because as you know, Sean, there's could be 2 beige interiors, but based on our PO codes, one could have like the bottom half in black plastic, while the other one can have the bottom in all white plastic. And there's a lot of factors on the interior that change from black to a beige or a cream or a blue. Like it's not just same recipe for, all right, we're just going to make sure all the plastic trims go to white or black or blue. Like sometimes there's the cause and effect that changes the stitching. There's a lot of things that make it interior. And so that stuff is a lot more like we'll spend a month to 2 months on just product revisions. And that's just the nature of it. And it's kind of asking them the right questions. Like, is this it? Then like for the Escalade, for example, even though it's a new Escalade, I was referencing last year's Escalade because some of those interiors were the same idea, but obviously the design changed. Yeah. And then there were brand new interiors where like there was things like E3 or E4 was like a Renaissance red. It's a nice, beautiful red interior. And all they had was just like one 3D rendering of it that looked like a sketch thing. And there was like no other angle. And there's a lot more to an interior because we render through panoramic views. So there's no way to like ignore the fact that the back seats, because the Escalade has different style of seats. It's 3-row seating, and then each seat, I think, has like 6 options of different seat styles. And then when you come to the second row of seats, they have like these executive things where they have like a table that comes out, or you have this like long, like really cool, like digital thing. So anyhow, there's a lot of options, and it's kind of up to me to kind of ask the clients the right questions. And so for that project, I created an Excel document. I was like, okay, for what interior, what color, what kind of seating, what kind of seat pattern. So I was just really trying to fish as much information out of them as possible. And even though they thought they had it, like sometimes there would be adjustments or new information that comes to life. And yeah, that project, just product revision, took more than the actual work of the job. So knocking out the full CGI environment, rendering it out, doing the animations was a lot less work than the product routes of getting the product accurate.
Now, do you ever have situations where you've done all these setups, or you've built out all these and modeled all these pieces, and then they want to change the lighting on something, and then I think there's sometimes when you change the lighting in CGI, the materials can look different based on the lighting. So how is that something that you go through?
Yeah.
Like, and what other scenarios that you happen like that when you're working?
Okay, so this, I mean, it's not really a secret, it's just my workflow. So to avoid these exact issues, because at first when we started doing these digital brochures back in 2001 or 2002, we had these issues where the interior was product approved. I do an environment render, and it's like, this is not right. This is not right. All of a sudden the material, like, this has blue. Why is that blue? It should be black. So the way I do it now is I set up like a master studio lighting with soft boxes, like if you were in a studio, just to really make the interior sing and show off all the details. Obviously, like the carpet, floor mat area is a little darker, but as far as like the hero trims, everything, it's visible. And that's what we go through product reviews. We do all that. Then what I do is I render out a panoramic HDRI of the full CGI environment that we're supposed to render these interiors in. And then what I do is I take that HDRI and I drop it into my master product review file. And that HDRI just gives me a hint of light direction, but not a full override with tone. So this way, it starts feeling like it's in the environment, but the studio lighting is still kind of the hero. But that HDRI kind of helps give it a hint of real life tone, but not enough to dominate the difference in visual. And that's been my method of making sure what we go through routes and routes of product revision still stays consistent to the final. Now for exteriors, that's always a one-off thing, and we adjust it based on where the car sits with the reflections, the highlights, all that good stuff. But for the interiors, those were honestly the most annoying like things to get just right, because once product is approved and then you do just a full-on HDRI or a sun, it changes the vibe of the whole thing.
Completely. Yeah.
Yep. And then I know the design team, they really want their colors to be like just right. And so for example, like this Renaissance red that we just did, they actually shipped me a chip, like a big, you probably know, you've seen that.
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
And this had literally like the same red, but all kinds of different patterns, like a leather pattern, a smooth plastic pattern, like all the ways the red could affect it. And that's the thing, is it's the craziest situation. No matter if I think it looks good, it doesn't mean that that's what the clients are going to approve. So what I did was I took that chip, I scanned it in my scanner to have as much of a flat light as possible. I took a photo of it in the shade. I took a photo of it in the sunlight. And then I took a photo of it inside my kitchen with, like warm light. And then inside this garage with very cool light. And what I did was I just took like little sample chips, like little color palettes. And I used those as my RGB value for the interior. And literally rendered out like 6 options with the color chip match. So like, here's this interior with this color. Here's what the color chip is doing in this light. And I was like, which one's right? Because realistically, they're all right. It's just the lighting that changes the vibe of it. And because we went through like back and forth, I think like 2 weeks of like adjustments on the red until they sent me the color chip. And that method allowed us to knock it out on first try. Because all they did was they're like, hey, that one looks good, use that one. There's no recipe for success there. It's a matter of presenting them options and working with them. And that's what, like, when we do like jelly beans, colorizers, even though I, like, for example, I'll do like a silver. To me, it looks silver, but the client doesn't want any environment colors in it. They want it to read as desaturated silver. And so what we've been doing, this has been really, really amazing, is I'll knock out all these colors, send it to them. They kind of chew on it, and then we'll have a live session with their lead, like design team person. And she's like, all right, add a little bit more blue, take away. And she is amazing. Like, she literally makes it very easy to dial in the colors, because she'll be like, all right, that looks good. Now in the side, can you just brush in a little bit more pink or a little bit more yellow? And I'll just do a live session with her. She's like, yep, I approve it. And we'll knock out like 9 colors in 30 minutes and they are done. Like, no more back and forth. Once she approves it, she's like, that's what I'm happy with. And because she's at like that seniority level, whatever she approves is approved. No one questions it. You got to find the way to work best with your clients, in my opinion. I try to take away as much stress from my clients as possible. And so that the way they have to do as little amount of work, because again, the way I look at it, everyone is good. You get a CAD model. It doesn't matter whether you're good at CGI or not. You throw paint on it. And now with the materials being available everywhere, you throw rubber on the tires, chrome on the rims, paint on the car. The CAD data is going to make it look amazing. So these days, it's so hard to just render a good car when it's CAD. It's not like you have to try to make something look good that looks awful, so you got to really find ways to fake it. All these vendors, all these studios can render a car and make it look good. How do you make yourself stand out from the competition? And so my goal is to do everything I can so the clients have to do even less work. Finding that little thing that could help them would go, this person helped me not have to spend the next hour or two away from my family. I got to go home and relax, and they took care of it. And that's the way I look at it, is I focus on work. That's just with me being poor. I focus on grinding away. I believe that's what I got to do. While the opportunities there, I'm going to work and work and work. And so for me, I don't mind working through the weekend. I don't mind working in the evenings, but I know there's some people that have a firm 9 to 5, then they have a family, they have kids, they want to spend time with them. So if I could take away an hour and a half of their time so they could have it with their children, then hell yes. Like, that's what I want to do, is take away as much of their responsibility and put it on me.
From start to finish, how long does a project usually take? Like, say the brochure that you were talking about.
With a new vehicle, because a lot of the latest stuff we've been doing has always been brand new, like, vehicles. So there's very limited information. Those typically take 3 months. And that's not for the actual working time. That's just product reviews, waiting. You know how it is what it is. If we're doing like a one-off job, like so I do a lot of TV end frames, for example. That's like at the end of the commercial, you'll see a camera moving around. So I don't know if you've seen any of these Hummers. It's like Moab, Red Rocks, and there's a white Hummer and the camera pans, and then there's like the discount. So I've done some of those. And I get the CAD data. I have it prepped within 1 day. Typically, it goes through 2-3 revisions, but usually we can knock that whole CAD data prep product approval within 3 days. And then I'll send the client first, middle, and last for review. Like, okay, maybe they don't like the way the paint looks here, so that way I'll know to adjust it before we go to final. And hopefully they give me all that feedback within the next day or two. And then with my render farm, it takes me about 3 to 4 hours to render out for those Moab end frames we do. It's not 4K, but it's right between like 2K and 4K, that center resolution.
Right, 32.
So whatever it is, yeah, exactly. So we'll knock that out. That takes about 4 hours to render out a 12 to 15 second animation. And then I'll composite it all within the same day and by the end of the day, it takes me 1 day to go to render, composite, and deliver first look semifinal for approval. So if it's a end frame 15 second on a good, like, everyone's active, it takes about a week, just because most of it is just the back and forth.
I mean, for CGI, that's impressive. And I guess for all the gearheads out there, what kind of monster setup are you running?
Dude, this is me being an idiot, so I don't know the like...
Idiot away, please.
The AMDs, like, I don't know the processor numbers and names. A lot of people nerd out and know that. I can just tell you what I have. My main workstation, the Hero one, I think it's 64 cores times 2. So it's like 128 for one of render buckets or whatever. So it's like rendering super fast. And then 128 gigs of RAM. And then what is that, like 1090, whatever that new GPU is, or 4090, that's what I have, the RTX, whatever, NVIDIA. Yep, and so that's my main workstation. And then I have 14 render nodes. And those render nodes, they're about $1,400 each, not crazy expensive, but they are really, really fast. And it's just an AMD processor, one of those Threadrippers. I don't know if it's 9550 or 59, something like that. But needless to say, I think it's like 24 cores or 12 cores, 24 total, whatever. And this is, again, my preference, because the Corona renderer, I'm sure you've heard of it, great render engine. I've always had RAM issues with it when working with CAD data. V-Ray is very, very nice with RAM. Like, it's whatever they did, like I could render out a pack shot of like 7 to 9 CAD files, and it will render it on 64 gigs of RAM. So all my render nodes are 64 gigs of RAM, and I've been rendering out animations for full CGI racetracks to 9 vehicle like pack shots, 0 issues. I've never had an issue with RAM being a problem for a job not rendering properly.
In terms of applications, is your setup like Maya for modeling, 3ds for building scenes, and then V-Ray for render?
I use 3D Studio Max and V-Ray. That's it. Okay. Nothing more. And then within 3D Studio Max, for if I have to do like some particle sims or whatever, I use Phoenix FD. It's also Chaos Group owned.
Chaos Phoenix, yeah.
Yep, and that helps you with like water, fire, little miscellaneous things. It's not amazing Hollywood stuff, but it still works. It gets the job done if it's like little visual effects here and there. I'm not a big particle guy, so while I know how to light, render, rig, animate, all that stuff, I draw the line and then I outsource it to a professional that knows what he's doing versus me trying to learn it.
How has AI affected what you do?
I don't see AI as a negative. Because to me, the people I could see it really screwing over is photographers, especially the better it gets. Because I haven't really seen anyone use AI to put in like a brand new CAD model and have it render it. Not yet, at least. But I personally have been using AI to generate amazing looking backplates. And we've done a few jobs where Leah Burnett actually used... it wasn't Midjourney, it was another AI engine, because for legal reasons, they have to make sure that licensing is, so that's where now AI for commercial use is very tricky, because at the end of the day, it becomes a whole licensing thing versus does it look good or not. Right. And so we've done a few jobs, and what we've done is we've worked with them, generate backplates, and then we run it through, there was a Magnifica or something, and it just makes the AI backplate even better. Then Dean does more hands-on, just personal retouching, like adds more detail with his retouching skills. And then we render out a brand new vehicle that's product accurate into those backplates. So we've been using AI on a few jobs with them, and it's been fantastic. But the problem is what they've been using, I think it's Bria. Bria, I think, is the AI engine. And it's almost like it picks up stuff from Shutterstock. So the backplates aren't as glamorous, where when I'm using Midjourney, it is beautiful, like the lighting, the tones, the vibe. Midjourney just does a really good job where you look at it, you're like, this is amazing. Like, if I was a photographer, I don't even know how the hell I'd capture this kind of backplate without it just being, like, all stars have to align to create this vibe, where Midjourney is like, oh, you want amazing? Here you go. Here's a couple seconds of work. Here you go. So I'm digging it. I don't know how it will affect when CAD data, is able to be implemented. But what I do know is, based on never-ending product revisions on all the work that I'm doing, it's going to be tough to render out product-accurate AI images that are going to be product-accurate. You know what I mean? Like, there's always little adjustments here and there. So I don't see it as a bad thing. Some of the stuff isn't quite there yet for quality. Like, I've tried to do those animation things where you put in an AI thing, and it's just, like, for example, I just did one. It was a black male model. And he's standing, he's got kind of like a shirt open. He's got his like chest, abs showing. It looks really cool. He's very built guy. And so when I ran it through the AI engine, it took his chest muscles and it turned him into 2 hands going like this on his chest. I was like, what the hell? Like, well, how did it interpret like a chest muscle like pecs into 2 hands going like this?
Right.
So that's where, unfortunately, it still like has its limitations, but it still looked awesome. So I was like, I posted on Instagram. I don't know if you saw that one. It was like the black guy in front of the like cool house with the black wing in the background. I just rendered a still. And again, that backplate was originally created in Midjourney. Then I rendered out the car and just made it look sweet. And I was like, I want to see how it would look like if AI did an animation of this. And so it has like the camera kind of zooming in and shifting sideways. And the car stayed true for the most part. And then it was just the guy, and the guy was like kind of moving. He had some cool behavior. It was really neat. But when you really start really digging into it, you can see like the parallax of the background starting to fall apart. The crest of the Cadillac got all blurry. So it's not there yet, but I think it's exciting of what it could do. And there was this one project I did for myself, Sean. I just generated ideas in AI for an environment. I found one I like, and I recreated it full as CGI. So I think for like conceptual environment design, it's an amazing tool.
Do you ever have it write, like I use ChatGPT to write code for Phoenix or within 3ds Max for like for particles or for...
Really?
Yeah, so you can actually describe what you want and it'll tell you what to write. I forget the name of the...
Python,
yeah. So it'll write it in Python, as well as actions. And another thing you can do is you can, like I'll take materials and I'll upload the material into ChatGPT and it'll give me all the material settings in order to be able to recreate that material.
Really?
In V-Ray, yeah. So
that is awesome.
Bitmap, diffusion bitmaps in order to be able to create elevation and textures and things like that.
Oh yeah.
It has access to all those settings and then tells you what to change in order to make things faster. Because I know for you, it's kind of like, what can I cut out of this? And I think if you kind of were to present some scenarios of things, it would be able to tell you, what you could change on settings in order to be able to make things faster, or or with your setup, things like that.
I might have to like chat with you offline on that. That sounds very cool.
With the way the industry works now, and the way that marketing and content creation has played out, how has that affected you and with what you do in terms of kind of streaming and TikTok and social media and obviously the website where people sell their products? How has that evolved kind of for you over the years?
Well, what I do know is we get a lot more like interest in motion jobs. So motion, there's a lot more bigger budgets attached to it, and it's a lot more interest because those animations could get used on, like you mentioned, social media, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. But then the one thing that we always run into is, they want like an Instagram video. And as you know, the attention span for Instagram is 5-7 seconds, and then you're clicking next. You're not watching it. And so we run into this issue where we try to kind of like tell the agencies and clients is less is more. If we could knock out more content in less amount of time, we could make the budget smaller. As long as we know what we want to show, at that point, it's like you got to kind of like compromise of how professional does this have to be, or do we just have to make cool stuff and put it out there just to have content that's filling the thing. And like I was making some reels for myself. This was 2 years ago. I just want to go viral. That was my goal. And I was pumping out a reel every single day, just random stuff, whether it's cars flying off bridges, cars going into lakes. But eventually I went viral. Like one of my videos got 31 or 37 million views. Another one got 15 million. So I hit the goal. I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't need this anymore. But what happened was me always posting this. One of our Cadillac clients found one of those videos interesting. And she reached out to Leo Burnett. It's like, hey, can we have Tiki make an animation just like this, but with my car? And so we did that. So thanks to social media and those reels, we landed a little project to do just that. And it was great because she didn't have a huge budget to work with. She wanted that cool animation. And we're like, okay, we could do this. Like, what we do want to do is not have it be a 1 month back and forth with client revisions. And she was amazing. It was very simple. We did the same recipe like I would. She said, just have Sergey do what Sergey does. And so I had the camera flying around the car, did the same particle sim of like the fire transitioning the car paint. We did it. And from start to finish, that job maybe took 2 weeks. And it was like a 15-second reel for social media.
It seems like this year has been very different in relationship to past years with workload and content creation from commercials to stills. Has it affected CGI at all? Have you seen the change?
What has affected us is GM taking the business from Detroit and moving it to different agencies. So that actually did create a big delay in workload, because what happened was they reviewed all their vendors, and then they just chose new agencies out west to do work with. So now we're kind of like starting round 2 of Tiki, if you will. So Chuck's out there getting on phone calls for us. We're trying to get our foot in the door and show people what we could do. What we done with Leo Burnett, now we want to do it with another agency. So now it's kind of like us proving ourselves and showing them what it is we do to help them with their workload and building that trust. Because at the end of the day, if we drop the ball, they look bad as a first impression to their brand new, client, who is GM. So that has slowed down. We are doing a few direct jobs with GM, which is nice, but even so, it's been a slow start currently. Yeah, for sure.
Is there anything you guys are doing different to kind of alter the way to kind of, be more future forward for the potential clients that you're looking to pick up?
I created a whole document showing all the assets we own that is GM. So all the CAD files that I have that are ready, organized, product accurate, every trim spec, all the end frame scenes we've done. Because now with the new vendors owning the account, they're like, okay, we need, let's say, like an Escalade rendered in the blue interior. Now we have to find a vendor that has the product approved, or find a vendor that's going to go through product revisions. One makes it, and I'm over here like, check it out. Like, here are all the assets that we spend months doing product reviews. They're good to go. So if you have a rush deadline, we're here to help you because we have it. We have all the assets ready to go. Just give us a project that needs help with. So it's a slow thing, and I don't know the ins and outs of the industry of how long it takes. So for the moment, while that's been delayed, I've been picking up a few like little side freelance jobs, as well as because my off CGI project is I've been doing a lot of carbon fiber fabrication. That's been my new hobby, is learning all that. That's why you see like the 3D printers behind me.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so I 3D print my own, like I make designs. I have a 3D scanner, so I'll scan a car, I'll design car parts, then I 3D print the mold, and then I actually make a carbon fiber part. So I've been selling car parts for the Nissan GTR as
cool.
Just like miscellaneous things to keep me busy and like make a little money here and there for burping. That's been my new thing, is how do I afford alcohol?
I think with that, we can go into the 10
It's
questions.
time for
10 questions. Is that a yes or no, or what do you think?
10 questions.
What's your favorite part about working in CGI?
I love seeing the new cars. Like being able to get access to what a new car is going to be before the public has, to me, it's just, that's the most exciting, at least from the automotive industry, is like we just finished a job right before the ZR1 got revealed. And I got the CAD data and I was working on the ZR1 and seeing the assets firsthand and just being able to like go against heavy hitters in the industry. Like sometimes we've been on the same jobs as Recom and we would win. I'm like, this is amazing that I'm a nobody, because I respect these people. I respect Taylor James, Recom Farmhouse, all these big heavy hitters in the industry, the people that I look up to. And so when we all go on bidding on the same job and we win, it's a really, to me, it's like a little achievements of you're actually doing something right in life where you could actually compete against these people and land a job. So that's like, for me, also the most exciting thing about CGI is competing against the people you actually look up to.
That's cool. That's cool. If you had to choose between making 3ds Max have a faster workflow or making Unreal Engine look like 3ds Max, what would you prefer?
Based on the workflow I have with 3D Max, I am very quick with the CAD stuff. For example, you send me a CAD file right now, I'll have a product ready for review within 2 hours. I don't know if that's possible with Unreal, but I don't know enough Unreal to see that is or not. When we first started Tiki, Chuck was like, you should learn Unreal. I was like, Chuck, I'll learn it if that's the end resort, but for the moment, I could promise you I could get a lot more work done faster just sticking to what I do know. And so far, we have never had a client ask us, can you do this job in Unreal? Because our thought is, as long as we're hitting your deadlines and we're making it look good, why does it matter what tools we use, whether it's real time or not? Because you tell me to re-render an animation, that evening you're going to have it. Because I have a big enough render farm to be able to re-render animations without a delay in like 3-4 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then because I have everything internal, I don't have to outsource it to a render service and then have the CAD files floating around on the internet. That's actually why I invested, or Tiki, where we invested in all of our own hardware, all the security things, so that way we could have everything internal, secure, and never have to rely on any outsourcing agency or vendor.
What's the craziest deadline you've ever had to meet?
Sometimes we've had a job where it's like due that nighttime, like you get it in the morning and it's due that nighttime.
Oh, wow.
And to me, I love deadlines because that means that's the deadline. There's no more client revisions after that. You got to get it done. I think we had 2 weeks to get it done from start to finish, but I had to build a portion of that Le Mans racetrack in full CGI. So
Crazy.
While we were doing the product routes for reviews, because it was a brand new like spec that Cadillac was doing for the Blackwing, I was building the Le Mans racetrack. So it was a lot of Google images, looking at how it looks like from this angle, that angle, because we had to do angle in both directions as far and interiors. So I had to still give them enough room where during the live sessions, the creatives had the ability to move the camera around and not go, oh, there's nothing there. So it took a bit of time to model a racetrack for sure.
What do you enjoy more, modeling, scene building, or lighting?
Lighting. Modeling, it was great back when I first got into CGI, but you could either buy models. Anything automotive for the most part is always CAD data. You're not going to have to worry about modeling anything. Now, modeling, thanks to me spending all my years doing it, helps me a lot when I have to do these full CGI environments. So I could get that done without an issue. But the reason why I like lighting and rendering, it's what makes it come to life. No one is ever going to say, give me a doughboy of my car. They're going to say, I want it to look photoreal. And so to me, while all those skills are important, the most valuable skill set is how to make pretty pictures. That's what I would say is the key ingredient in CGI advertising, is making that final product look good.
What's the one creative tool or software you could not live without?
3D Max. Because I even create like my own textures and alphas in 3D Max. So like if I have like a certain pattern that I need to do, I'll apply it to like a square, and then I'll modify it and then create a tileable texture within 3D Max. So I use 3D Max as Photoshop sometimes.
What's a creative challenge you secretly love tackling?
One thing I really, really enjoy is rigging, because I don't do it a lot, but it's always a blast to make something function, especially in 3D. So whenever I get that opportunity, it's a blast because, like, for example, when I did the engine animations, those were so involved because one is if the CAD data comes in and things aren't positioned right, like the pistons and valves, then nothing's working right. So it's a lot of like trial, error, getting with engineers, asking them if the timing's right, getting the like camshafts, everything to rotate, the pistons, everything turning. And then after that, you typically always still have to simulate a combustion process where it's smoke and fire and everything. So I've always enjoyed technical rigs, whether it's making a bucket of a caterpillar function or a transmission where all the gears are spinning and all those things. Those were always a blast. Everything else I do with environment creation is all kind of like, I guess you could say, I've done so many of those things, it's just automated. It's like, okay, I have to create this environment. What do you like? What do you don't like? I'll throw some shapes together, get a few sign-offs, then start detailing, and we're done. But when you have to make something move and come to life, it's exciting because once it's real and it functions, there's a sense of reward for me to taking CAD data and making it alive, but realistically alive, where there's a cause and effect.
If you could work on any project in any industry, what would it be?
I've always loved creative advertising projects. And what I mean by those, it's not automotive. It's not like specific to brand. It's like we've done some jobs. The client, it was, they made vaccines for chickens. And the project was, we want a chicken, like a chicken coop or whatever, that has armor all over it to make the sales pitch of our vaccine creates an armor around your chicken. So those are the jobs that I've always found exciting, where it's taking a sketch and just doing whatever you have to do as a creative to get it done and come to life. So whether it's buying a chicken model, ZBrushing it to look more realistic, finding photos of chickens to composite the feathers. It's the agency doesn't care. They're just saying, here's my concept, make it happen. And you as a studio, as a creator, have to find any way you can to get it done and look good. Doesn't matter, because they're not going to ask you, how did you do it? They're just going to say, that looks good or that looks bad. So I've always enjoyed those jobs where it's conceptual advertising projects.
What's your most memorable client moment?
We had a project in Utah. It was for the Cadillac Lyric, but they were shooting backplates in Utah. What we would do is every night, me, Chuck, and the creative, we would go out to just bars in Utah. And to me, like during the day, I would just be like, okay, just got to run through this, shoot, whatever, just hang out. And I was looking forward to every evening just going to the bars and just hanging out and having good laughs and chit chat. So for me, I just love hanging out with clients and building a personal relationship versus it just always being about work. So that to me is the most exciting thing, is meeting different people with different opinions, lifestyles, and being able to build bonds and actually just enjoy each other's company outside of what can you do for me or how can I benefit from this relationship.
Which job role do you find the most exciting? Artist, producer, or sales?
Now that I have a business partner in sales, I don't have to worry about that part, but I enjoy them all because as the artist, I enjoy doing the work. As the producer, I enjoy getting all the information I need to do, like I need about the job to make sure it gets done right. And then from the sales part, because again, Chuck does the sales, but I still enjoy being able to hang out with the clients and just building good relationships. Because at the end of the day, let's say you have a client that has a job and they have two vendors, same exact budget, like they're both coming out at the same price, both same skill sets, but the client hangs out with this person and has a good bond outside of work. And this studio is only focused on, we'll do the job. He's probably naturally going to want to work with the people he genuinely enjoys the company of. And so that's why I think it's important to not only do good work, but also just being able to like bond with your clients on a personal level.
If you weren't in the world of CGI, what career would you be in?
I have a buddy in Michigan and he does like home rehabs. So blue collar work. The guy is extremely successful. He just bought himself a Revolto. So what, $750,000, $800,000 car, he bought it with cash. So I wish I knew more about, I guess you could say contractor. Like how to like rehab homes, do all that, the ins and outs, because there could be a lot of money to be made. But just like any industry, I respect the knowledge that comes in doing a good job. I wish I knew more about that, like contractor work, things like that, because I see that as a very, very important skill set to have in life. It's just unfortunately I don't have it. So I stick to making pretty pictures.
10 questions.
10 questions.
Having gone through everything you've gone through, is there anything you wish you had told your younger self?
Yes. One is do enough with modeling just to get the hang of it. Focus on lighting, materials, and like finishing images. And two, networking. In my opinion, networking is very critical to our industry because there's so many people that are very, very talented and they have no opportunities. And that's just be limited because they don't have the right people that know them or they know that gives them a chance to thrive. I've seen so many people come into some of these studios that I worked at that they work in an automotive studio and they absolutely hate cars. But they just had the opportunity to work there. And it boggles my mind. You have these amazing, passionate artists that love automotive work, and they don't even get the chance to work on cars. And then you have these people that hate cars, have no desire to learn about them or work on them, that just work there because that's the job they have.
So with that said, what advice would you have for somebody trying to get into CGI?
It's a very tough industry. Like, if you want to commit to CGI, you got to be able to find a way to shine and stand out from the competition. And so it's either you have to be extremely good, where people want to use you no matter what, or two, you know the right people and you have a great personality and people want to work with you just because they enjoy your company. So everyone can make CAD data look good. What makes you different than the Joe or Bob that has the same CAD file? Be a problem solver. Don't be afraid to share an opinion. Don't be stubborn about the opinion. Oh, like when I share my opinions, I always mention, this is just my opinion.
Right.
Here's what I think. And because again, they're the clients, they know what's best for their clients and their product. But as a creative, I think they still enjoy the fact that we can share our opinion of what we think would look good, but we're able to work with what they want us to do. So don't be a robot is the way I would see it. Be more like confident in your work and know that you know what you're talking about, but don't be like too focused on this is my way or the highway, because then you're not going to have any work.
Of all the things you've done, what's the thing you're like most proud of?
Different jobs I've worked on had different like wins, if you will.
Right.
I think the most like complex job I've ever done is I've done a combine animation, and that was doing a full functionality of the whole combine. So it was animating crops going into the front of it, then going into the top, using the combine's features to break up the crops, then having the gears turning, the shaker, everything to separate. So that was one of the most complex animations I've done on functionality. But then like when I've done the Blackwing Cadillac jobs, I've had to build a full-on racetrack. So it wasn't like a corner. I had to literally build a whole racetrack so the client could just be like, all right, we want the car there, we want the car there, we want to go around the corner. And we did that. We literally had a working session with them. We're like, all right, let's have it go around the apex, maybe hit it a little bit, have the camera fly around. And that job was interesting because I legitimately built a full-on racetrack. And some of these jobs, I don't even know how I do it. I just get into it, and somehow the puzzle comes together without me really overthinking it too much, if you will.
So where can people find you in terms of social media and online?
So Tiki Studios Detroit, that's the Instagram for my company. And then tikistudios.com is the website that has all of our work.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate your time. I thank you for coming on and opening up and giving people insight to what you do. And
Absolutely. And thanks for the offer, man. This is going to be interesting.
that's a wrap.
Just fixing post.